More than 114,000 youth with disabilities have the potential to work, yet remain jobless. Their employment rate is significantly lower than that of their non-disabled peers. This represents a major missed opportunity for our society, both in the unique talents and perspectives Canadian workplaces are losing, and in the ability of these young people to achieve their goals, independence, and full potential. We know that employment outcomes are shaped by many factors, including access to opportunities, training, preparedness, supportive policies, accessibility, and reliable transportation. But if these supports are not consistently strengthened by local communities and by governments at both the provincial and federal levels, youth with disabilities will continue to face systemic barriers and inequities in employment. Funded by Accessibility Standards Canada, the YA Project, Youth Employment Through Accessible and Healthy Communities, was formed to identify what considerations should be added to employment standards to include youth with disabilities. YA has three main objectives: to identify best practices for school-to-work transitions that can support access of youth with disabilities into employment, to assess the community factors that support or hinder youth with disabilities pathways to employment in Canada, to inform pathways for the development of standards that consider the specific needs and evolving capacities of youth with disabilities. Our approach. Using a mixed methods approach, we conducted 3 studies to better understand the factors that contribute to building healthy, inclusive communities. These included a review of the scientific literature, including an environmental scan of international and national best practices for youth employment programs and pathways, a community assessment using the Child Index, interviews with key informants and community interest holders to identify what they see as the key factors contributing to successful pathways to employment for youth with disabilities. What we discovered. We have identified several factors that contribute to successful employment transitions for youth with disabilities. Programs that combine job skills training, internship or job placement opportunities, and educational components within structured environments such as schools and hospitals were found to be especially effective. Many successful employment initiatives also emphasize that having strong partnerships with external organizations and employers was helpful in securing employment for youth. Of note, most of the programs we identified in research and in the environmental scan happen in urban centers, where program design, infrastructure, and the broader community environment have similar characteristics. The Child CHI assessments were done in a community-based, a rehabilitation-based, and a school-based employment program, all that were considered by our advisory as best practices programs in Canada. We learned that what these programs have in common is a strong connection to their communities, with a flow of partnerships that allow for youth in the program to connect to employers, a location that favors use of adapted public transit, universally accessible built environments in the institutions where programs occur, and staff that is well-trained and knowledgeable about disabilities. However, significant barriers remain. Limited research exists on the intersection of disability, identity, and employment experiences. Access to accessible transportation remains a major challenge in non-metropolitan areas. Community services are often siloed within health, education, and real-world employers, creating gaps in support as youth transition into adult systems. Youth with disabilities experience disproportionately high rates of mental health challenges, which can impact their successful inclusion in the workplaces. Yet, few employment programs consider mental health supports. Key recommendations. Building on our findings, we propose several recommendations to strengthen school-to-work pathways and improve employment outcomes for youth with disabilities. Integrate education-based, work-related, and social development components into school-to-work transition programs. Develop targeted employment services and supports for youth with intersectional identities and needs, including Indigenous youth with disabilities, girls and gender-diverse youth, language minorities, newcomers to Canada, and youth living outside of urban centres. Strengthen partnerships and improve cross-sector coordination among community services, health and education sectors, employers, and institutions. Align and synchronize supports and services across systems to ensure continuity of supports, including mental health supports throughout the lifespan. These focus on improving program design, strengthening coordination across systems, and ensuring supports are responsive to diverse lived experiences. Next steps. Use these insights to identify core factors that can inform the development of future standards, programs, and guidelines for youth employment. Raised awareness by community, health, education, and employers about ways to use Child CHI to assess the inclusivity and health of their communities and develop strong, accessible pathways to the employment of all youth. current employment standards do not include specific provisions for youth, and it may seem that developing standards tailored to youth with disabilities is an even more distant goal. However, we believe the opposite is true. Advancing this work is both necessary and achievable, building a more informed, inclusive, and institutionally prepared society that supports full and equal citizenship opportunities for all youth with all their diversity requires stronger, more responsive standards, regulations, programming, and overall awareness to create inclusive communities where everyone belongs. For more information about the YA Project and more, visit www.childhooddisability.ca. Write us at mcgilldisabilityresearch@gmail.com or contact the principal investigator in this study, denise.chikeko@mcgill.ca.